Welcome to Buckets. My name's Matt Moore, and I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. This is your Futures Friday episode. This week, I'm joined by Jim Turvey, Turvey Bets. You can find him in the Action Network app. He's going to join me to talk about all sorts of futures, make miss. We're going to do a little bit of division betting, all sorts of stuff. Plus, oh yeah, that's right. It's finals matchup time. It's my sweet spot, and I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on that bet as well. That the one that all my colleagues seem to hate. We'll talk about that later on today. I want to let you know that everything that we talk about in the podcast can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. Best way for you to track your bets. You get up to the second information where the bets and money are coming in on. Our daily show, Green Dot Daily, is in there. I'm on there like 3 times a week now with NBA. It's a great show. It gets you set at all sorts of sports. If you want to get caught up on March Madness quickly, Green Dot Daily is a good place to start, as well as our college podcast, Big Bets on Campus. Check out those two things and you can get caught up. You don't have to have watched college at all. I haven't, but I'm going to get caught up and be raring to go to bet the NCAA tournament. So make sure to check that out. Also, I want to let you know that I was on the Favorites podcast. If you are not a subscriber, definitely go check out the Favorites podcast with Simon Hunter and Chad Millman, my boss. We talked about all sorts of stuff. The Lakers in there, had a long discussion on the Kings, and like I made a pretty coherent case for like why they're actually not a bad bet for the Western Conference. I'm actually probably gonna force Jim into a conversation about that as well. We'll talk about all that and more, but we're gonna get started. So Jim, I have laid out a number of bets for us to talk about for a best bet. And the first one we're gonna start with is a make and a miss bet. So you got to pick one best bet to make and one best bet to miss. I will go first. And that's going to be to miss. I found a plus 280 today in the market on the Brooklyn Nets to miss the NBA postseason, playoffs rather. Postseason includes the play-in. This is a bet that's been, all of the smart gambling people have talked about this in the last week. I'm not going to try and pass this off as my own analysis. Like, honestly, there was a reason I didn't want to bet it, and I want to be like, fuck you, I'm betting them to make it. Just because I didn't come up with it. But eventually I was just like, man, this looks too good to be true. I kind of had the idea that the Nets would be fine if the trades. I was like, they're still really talented. And Jacques Vaughn's a good coach. Everyone has started betting this number to miss. It was plus 450 at the beginning of the week. It's down to plus 225 in some places in the market. It's getting very, very narrow. So I want to get in while I can still get over 2-1 on it. I mean, it's pretty simple. Like the Brooklyn Nets look like they have no idea how to play together. They don't have a lead point guard. They don't have a backup center. They don't really know what they're doing. And so to me, this is the best value. The Nets to miss the playoffs at plus 250 or better.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, actually, Matt. I know that, yeah, we talked about this a little bit before. Maybe the number breakdown on it isn't perfect. In fact, if you're gonna go straight numbers play, super boring. I think the best straight numbers play right now is Portland to miss minus 625. I don't know too many bettors out there. They're gonna lay minus 625. But I think that's the best statistical edge you can find out there right now. But from a normal bettor's perspective, I think the Nets make to miss, pardon me, the playoffs is the best bet right now. I was with you. I was pretty high on them right after the deadline. Love Bridges. I really like Dinwiddie. I thought, yeah, I was with you on Vaughn being pretty like, coach should just kind of get him over the finish line and get some playoff experience for what's going to be their young core moving forward. But it really hasn't sucked so far. They do have that 3-game lead, which is pretty nice. 3-game lead up on the 7 seed right now, or on the on the 8 seed. But I foresee the Heat passing them pretty easily. And then that kind of 7, 8, 9, 10, I could see them slipping one more spot. If they do hold on to 7, it does make it a little harder to get there from a numerical perspective. But I see one of these. It's so many teams clustered there that if one of these teams goes on low run and can play real hot down the stretch, and Nets kind of limp their way over, suddenly if they're slipping down to 8-9 area, it's going to be an uphill battle for them.
Brandon Anderson texted me about this, and he's off this week. He's on vacation, and he decide to text me about this bet. And he said that basically, like, the number, he ran me through the entire math, which I'm not going to bore you with, but the math does it, as you mentioned, it's bad. Part of it, though, Brandon is assuming that something like 50% to win at home in a first round matchup if they're the 7 seed. And if they lose, they're more like 65% plus to win the second one. I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I just don't know. If we get to a point where it's Toronto I am not going to feel like Toronto is a 35% dog versus the Brooklyn Nets even if they get to the 7th spot and lose that first one. Which, look, you know, when you're talking about a team that's cratering like this, I tend to be like, look, leads are insignificant because you've won at approximately these paces over the course of 6 months. This is not that team. Like, the Nets are not a 55% win percentage team. That's not who they are. Like, the odds of them cratering and losing another like 6 out of the next 10, 8 out of the next 10, as they are currently 2-8 in their last 10, are pretty high. And if that's the case, then even the Heats and the Hawks and the Raptors, as mediocre as those teams are, I think they can catch.
Well, and here's the other thing too. I live a 20-minute walk from Barclays Center. That place is not a fortress. If they get a home playoff game, I wouldn't be surprised if it's unless it's Trae Young, who New York has no love for. It could be 50-50 in that crowd. It's far from a great home court advantage, and in those one game play-in games, if they're not going to have the best player on the court, most likely in almost any of those matchups. And I like we said, the math, maybe if you walk through it step by step, didn't seem perfect right now. But I do think of all the kind of sane bets, Portland minus 625 aside, that's probably my go-to for miss the playoffs right now.
So my best bet to make the playoffs is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 164 at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's going to be my best bet to go ahead and make it. I like this Wolves team. I've liked them consistently. There are some numbers that are concerning because if you take their record outside of January, it's what's the word? Bad. It's bad. But presuming that Cat plays at some point, which I do think is still possible. I think it's possible he comes back in March. It gives them a little bit of a bump. You know, that win over the Clippers was significant. They got tiebreaker with that win. And that's a really fucking big deal that they got the tiebreaker over the Clippers, because that means that it just gives them another way to sneak into a spot or they get home court in a possible 7-8 matchup for the play-in tournament. Right now, I have the top 6 projected as I have Nuggets, Grizzlies, Kings, just barely Kings, Suns. That's 4. And then I do have 5 and 6 to be Dallas and the Clippers, but it's close. Like, this is not like there's not a big drop off between these two groups. Like, I have the Clippers projected. I have the Dallas Mavericks projected for 42.8 wins, the Clippers at 42.6, and Minnesota at 42.2. Like, it's a half game difference between those 3 teams. So even with the Mavericks getting a big win versus the Sixers, they record this on Thursday night, I still think it's entirely possible that the Mavericks and Clippers continue to kind of flub around, and it would be really hilarious to see the Grizzlies or the Timberwolves rather just slip into that spot. I'll just be honest here, if it's Timberwolves Clippers, they're going to be dogs. For sure they're going to be dogs. I get that. But like, is it really going to surprise you if the Clippers completely mess the bed? I don't think so. And I think it's entirely possible that the Wolves wind up with the 8th seed and then wind up being able to like sneak into this backdoor situation with an opportunity to go ahead and just like win that second play-in game and make the tournament, make the playoffs rather, at plus 164. So I have backed them all year. I like them. My power rating likes them. I'm going to stick with the Wolves at plus 164 as my best bet to make the playoffs. What's yours?
Yeah, I like that one. But I'm going a slightly different direction. I didn't see any that like popped off the page for me. So the 2 that I'm going to kind of talk out with you now and see where you're leaning as well. Wizards plus 270 and Bulls plus 440. The Bulls are a team that I have not been able to give up on all season. It's a terrible idea, but every time I think I'm fully out, they win a couple games. They put together a decent looking stretch, and the East just refuses to put them away. So as of right now, they are in that 11 spot. They haven't been great on the road. But I say this half jokingly, but half not jokingly. I do think Patrick Beverley has already kind of had a good impact there. Think about how good that backcourt was when it was Lonzo and Caruso, and that was kind of their, killer defensive bench unit. Pat Bev doesn't do everything Lonzo does, but from a defensive perspective, he had 10 assists the other night. Maybe from a creative perspective, I think that this team is, to get that number plus 440, I think isn't bad. you probably will be able to get it later on. Even if they do make the play in, it won't be too much shorter than this. So that's why it's not, popping off the page as a crazy good bet. But that was the one that caught my eye. Wizards plus 270. They've been consistent all year. They're not good, but they're just going to kind of be around. And no one in the Toronto has proven themselves to not be world beaters or anything this year. And the Wizards are about as healthy as any team in the league right now. So getting that much of a plus number just caught my eye. Neither really jump off the page. I'm curious your thoughts on both.
If it's Wizards Hawks let's say that the next net's absolutely crater, right? And it's Wizards Hawks in a battle for the 8th seed. Okay. Hard to get to there, but let's say the net's absolutely crater out. And so it's like Miami and Atlanta, or like Miami gets in, and then it's like Atlanta and the Wizards. Like, I'm just trying to figure out where we would feel good about the Wizards. Like, where would we feel like, what spot in the play-in tournament are we going to feel good about the Wizards? I can't go with you on Bulls just because, like, I had to take the over on them. I was like, no, like, they should be good. They should be better than that. Like, they should not be good. They should be like decent. This is a low number. And then I rebet them at 38.5.
Me too.
And we're gonna need 10 and 9 to get
it's
home on
real sweaty.
Which I do not feel awesome about. The Raptors loss, I think in particular, was like that was kind of where I was like, okay, that bet's dead. That was the one. Because the Raptors did not play well in that game. Like, the Raptors honestly looked outmatched. Like, the Bulls looked like they had more talent, and the Raptors just won that game because the Bulls just couldn't get their shit together. The Wizards, my biggest concern, honestly, and we'll talk about them more in our section on their division. The issue to me is pretty focused on one guy, and it's Beal. I don't trust him not to be like, oh no, my hamstring. Oh no, I've suffered a shoulder bruise. I'm out for the season. Woe is me. Oh, woe is me. To do this again. I can't go down this road with Bradley Beal again, where it's like every year he gets an injury that's like, is it traumatic? No, it's not a major injury. How long is he going to be out? The rest of the season. Like, I can't trust him. I cannot trust him to be there for the rest of the season when they don't have like a real shot at making a run. So we'll talk a little bit more about the Wizards in a little bit. I don't mind those plays. The Bulls at plus 440. I think that it's like a good number in terms of, like, I think it's an approximate number of where they're at. I thought about the Raptors here too. Like, I did think about the Raptors. That was like going to be my second option if I didn't go with Wolves, it was going to be Raptors, just because I feel like somehow, some way, this miserable ass team that even their fans hate is going to find itself in the playoffs. Like, I just feel like that's a thing that's going to happen, but I couldn't get the value to make sense on my end. Let's talk about the Pacific Division. I think this is a fascinating conversation. So I'm going to run down the standings real quick, and then we'll talk about the odds. The Kings lead the division. They are at 25 losses. If you are listening to this podcast, and I'm going to be doing these playoff picture podcasts going into the future, you're going to hear me talk about loss column, and you're going to be like, why don't you just say games back? And the answer is that you can make up wins. You can't make up losses. Like, if you're behind in the loss column, the other team has to help you, because if they just keep winning and you keep winning the whole way out, you do not control destiny. Kings are at 25 losses. The Suns are at 29, a full 4 back in the loss column. The Los Angeles Clippers, who are currently facing the Golden State Warriors, are at 31, and the Golden State Warriors are at 30. So that's like the conversation. And the Lakers are way down there at 33. By the way, we have Brandon and I have a Lakers to be the 5th team seated in the Pacific Division, to finish 5th in the division, which is looking real nice right now. This division, I think, is fascinating because Kevin Durant makes his debut. I had it on NBA Bet Stream on Wednesday versus the Hornets. They look good because, the Hornets, it's not that they didn't look good. They did. The defense in particular was pretty impressive. 4 games is a lot to make up. The market for this is what's crazy, though, because if you look at the market over at FanDuel Sportsbook, and this is pretty much standard across the board, is that the Suns are minus 130 to win this division. The Kings have a 4-game lead with less than 20 to go, and they're plus 180. You're almost at 2-1 for the Kings to win this division with a 4-game lead and 20 games left. When you look at this division and the numbers that are on the board, as the Suns are minus 130, Kings plus 180, Clippers plus 650, and Warriors 16-1. Where do you think the value is if you want to bet the Pacific Division into the last month of the season?
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I when I went and checked this today, I was sure you had to have a typo in the write up, because like there's no way the Kings are. I thought maybe you meant Suns plus 180. That I went and checked, and yeah, it's wild to me that everything you just laid out, 4 games up in the last column, a team that hasn't really slowed down. We haven't seen any signs of them really showing any weaknesses, and they're plus 180 to hold on to the division is crazy to me. So I'm in lockstep with you there, pretty much. Not to just repeat everything you said. So the only other look I would bring up, and the only problem with it is it's going to be much different after this game that we're recording during, because at this second, Warriors plus 1600, I kind of like as well. It probably won't hit, but these plus 1600s, we're working in small percentages in small implied percentages when you get down there. They have the Clippers right now. If they take care of business at home, they're usually pretty good at home. I think right now it's around a tie game in the third quarter. Now this number is going to change if they beat the Clippers tonight, because that will be a big in division win, and they'll be what I think they may be also four back in the last column. They're 5 back in the last column. And this is, Steph is looking to come back as early as, I believe it's like less than a week away now at this point. They've kind of held their own without him around. They're smart. They'll work him back in. The only thing against it is they probably aren't feeling a crunch to catch up to the Kings, because they're looking at this from a bigger picture. But with a number like plus 1600, I mean, to me, the best bet is Kings plus 180 for sure. The only other thing, like I said, that kind of caught my eye is this Warriors play, just because of the value of it.
So a couple of things to update you in real time as we're recording this. The Warriors have rattled off a 36-13 third quarter to take a 12-point lead. Warriors third quarters are back, baby. 2, Steph Curry is going to be back on Sunday. That was reported tonight. Yeah. So you get him back a little bit earlier. Don't hate it, because look, if anybody's going to rattle off like an 18-2 run, it's going to be Golden State here, right? Like, get everybody back, play everybody. I still just feel like they're going to rest guys enough. Like, they're still just going to be like, no, Steph just came back. We're going to be careful with it. Let's go ahead and rest him. Clay needs a night off, etc. And they've just been so bad on the road. Like, they've just been so bad on the road. It's one of the things is like, when we're at this point in the season, I'm starting to look at, when we're making these bets, like, what is your win profile? Like, I'm looking at that all year, but especially now. And, the Kings are 24-7 versus teams below 500. The Suns are just 18-11. The Warriors 18-14, and the Clippers 22-8, which is a little bit comparable to the Kings. But the problem is the Clippers just can't beat anybody good. Like, Clippers are 11-23 versus teams over 500. Really bad. So, the 16-1 is really tempting. The Golden State is a fascinating team to try and figure out, just because it's like, they've told us for 6 months, we're not good. We're not bad, but we're not good. And you'd be like, well, with Steph's been out, even with Steph, like, that's why they're still at this area, is they haven't been good enough with Steph to compensate when he's been out, which is what happened last year. Like, Steph missed a bunch of time last year at the end of the season. Guess what? The Warriors still finished top 3 in the West. Like, this is the thing. So, I agree with you that 1600 has some value, but to me, the Kings still at plus 180, I think is a really good spot. I don't mind taking a flyer on it, but I do think that Phoenix is going to have to be, their margin for error is almost 0 for a team that has to build in a little bit of margin for error for CP3 and KD in terms of rest.
When the Kings have a very hard schedule, and I think that's I've heard that brought up as a potential fade Kings down the stretch thing, but Phoenix has almost as hard of a schedule. If you go to Tankathon, I think the Kings are like 4th hardest, Suns maybe 6th hardest. The Warriors actually have the easiest of those remaining schedules, and I do wonder if there's any chance, because they've been so bad on the road this season, that they do kind of focus on trying to get that 4th seed. Now, maybe they big brain it and they say the Nuggets are the only team that like really scare us, so the being able to avoid them by being, in the sixth spot isn't the end of the world. We don't hate that either. So there's so many moving parts here. It's a little hard to pin any of this stuff down. But yeah, I think Kings plus 180 has to be the play out of that division right now.
Okay, let's move over back to the Southeast division. And we're gonna talk about that one as well, because it's another one that's kind of up in the air. To look at the standings, we've got the Miami Heat, who I have dubbed the Fountain of Sadness team for the season. That means a team that is just like miserable and yet continues to, they're not bad enough to be removed from like the list. They're not just bad. They're not the Hornets. They're still in the playoff conversation. They're above 500, but they're just sad. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They're at 30 losses. The Hawks are one behind them at 31. They are 500. And then there's the Washington Wizards at 30 and 32. So I went ahead and I put this one in the app today. Wizards plus 1,100 to win the Southeast division. It's enough for me to get value on this. So I have projections, and those are going to be coming out in our playoff pictures. First edition should be out Friday if I can get the rest of it done tonight. I have the final projections for these teams at Heat 41.9 wins, Hawks at 41.3, and the Wizards at 40. So I have it 42, 41, 40. That's a narrow enough margin for me to go ahead and get Wizards 11 plus 1,100. Like, I'm not projecting the Wizards are going to be woefully short. I actually kind of think that if you're going to bet, I mentioned like the Wizards to make the, you talked about the Wizards to make the playoffs bet. I honestly think if you're going to go that route, just bet this one. Like, just bet the 11-1, because the odds of them making the playoffs are significantly strengthened inherently by them winning the division and landing in like a 7 or an 8 spot. It's almost impossible for them to get worse than 7th if they do win the division. But look, Wizards fans are very upset with me because I made some comments on radio that was basically, I said, this is a team that plays like they know that the end is like, that there's no point here, that they're just like playing out the string and that they have no future. And I stand by that. Like, that's what I've gotten from them all season. Like, I know that there are players that are unhappy on the roster that are just like, what are we doing here? But they're there and they actually are good. Like, they're a good team. I don't think they necessarily play together or know what they're playing for, but like, this team is just, it's competent, pretty well coached, and the guys know how to play together. Like Monte Morris, Kyle Kuzma, Bradley Beal, Denny has played well. KP's been fantastic. KP's been incredible. He's been better than he was in Dallas. He's been great. So this team is really talented. I know you're with me on this. What are your thoughts on the Wizards to win the Southeast division at plus 1,100?
Yeah, hopefully it's not boring podcast, but lockstep once again. To your point that you've mentioned, 2 back in the loss column. That's first and foremost. With a quarter of the season still to go, that's a pretty small margin. Yeah. They have a better net rating than the Heat this year. The Heat have luck boxed their way into several wins, and I think a lot of that is Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler. If you have those 2 guys, I give a little bit of credence to you being able to outperform a net rating, knowing when to show up in those closer games and when to kind of throw in the towel in a bigger loss. But yeah, I mean, this number, implied odds under 10%. I see this as more like around a 15 to 20% chance that they pull through with a division. That's a pretty significant edge when we're talking about such a small portion of the season remaining. You were talking earlier about having no faith in Bradley Beal staying healthy, and I agree to a certain extent. But I don't know if I worry that much if he goes out. He's been in and out, and they've been pretty consistent with him, without him. I probably should have the numbers right in front of me, but earlier this season, I remember looking up, with him there, games with him in or with him out, and there wasn't a massive difference. So even if they do lose someone, they've got some pretty good depth. And kind of to your point from earlier, they've just been steady throughout the season, good coaching. And if the Heat, have a few of those bad bounces in close games that they've won, I think this plus 1,100 number is pretty solid.
They only have their remaining games. They've only got, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4. They've got 7 road games left. So they have a home heavy schedule. They do have 2 versus the Hawks next week. They're going to need to at least split that. They got a big one tonight versus Raptors. They play the Raptors 3 times in these next couple of games in the last stretch of the season. They did take 1 tonight, so that gets them 2/3 of the way to tiebreaker over Raptors. That helps, but doesn't help for the division bet. They do face Miami in the second to last game of the season at home on April 7th. It would be very, very, very interesting if the Wizards were to get in a position to actually be able to and it would provide a hedge opportunity, right? Like if they pull into a 1-game lead or are tied with Miami going into that game, you could just go ahead because the Rockets are playing, or the Wizards are playing the Rockets in the last game of the season at home. Let's go ahead and mark that as a dub. Like we'll just go ahead and give them that one. And so if we give them that one, that could be really wind up being what matters here. I may regret it, but 11-1, I'm willing to go ahead and take the shot at a double-digit number here on the Wizards. Okay, now here we go. It's finals matchup time. I love these bets, and I will explain why I love these bets. There is only a handful of teams I think that you can talk yourself into a lot of squads. And I will take various flyers if I think a team has a chance to drastically elevate. If I think the chart for win percentage is going to take a huge jump, I'll take some flyers. But I think the finals matchup has a lot of value here because you're getting such good numbers on it. You're getting Celtics Suns is 6-1. So you're saying, I think Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul are going to win a very flawed Western Conference. And the Boston Celtics, who have been the best team for most of the year up until the last week or so when the Bucks finally overtook them, are going to be there too. And you get 6-1 on that. If you want to get even more daring, there's all these numbers that you can take a look at. I want to get your thoughts on this. One, I want to get your thoughts on if you like these types of bets, if not, why, and then give me one that you think has some value.
Yeah, for sure. So I like them. I think I like them most because of the potential hedge opportunities it gives. What I don't like about them is anytime, you're combining two markets that have a decent size hold and you're multiplying them against each other, the hold now is even higher. But yep. I do think as a hedge opportunity, it does provide a really good option. So to me, the one, it's what I made before the season. It's still plus 1,000 Bucks Nuggets is that's what I see. The only real significant edges. I could see that being, that's implied around 10%. I did a couple of, projection systems stuff out there tonight. It's around 9-10%. So I think that gives you great hedging opportunity because it seems likely one of those two teams is going to be there as well. So that's my kind of sane take. Now I'm going to walk through my absolutely non-sane take. The other bet that jumped out to me, mostly because I want to talk about these two teams. I think they're a little bit undervalued in the market right now, is Cavs Warriors plus 10,000 here, 100-1 basically.
100-1 real betting talk.
Yes, exactly. So throw $1 there or something. It's almost certainly not happening, right? That's implied 1%. It's probably in reality a little bit less than that. But the Cavs to me right now are an interesting team. They are still right up there in net rating with this. I believe they're still second to the Celtics in the entire association this season. And they haven't slowed down. The last month, they're third in net rating. They have Donovan Mitchell, who has been into the playoffs a ton. The rest of the team doesn't have the experience, but Mitchell has been amazing in the postseason time after time. They have a couple of defenders who, being able to put Evan Mobley, who's one of the most flexible defenders in the league, being able to put him on Giannis or being able to put him on Tatum, or just kind of letting him, do his defensive thing and kind of roam. That they're an interesting team. You could easily talk me into them losing to the Knicks in the first round. But I also think that the way they match up with some of the better teams in the East is intriguing to me. The logic for the Warriors is as simple as I want to be in on them when their market is the lowest. Now, it sounds like they're running away with this game tonight, so this number probably will have moved by the morning because I feel like the books know don't give a big number on the Warriors for too long because people are smart and they're going to know to jump on that number because the Warriors are never dead. They're never fully out of it. It's really hard to find long numbers on the Warriors and for good reason. So, they've killed me in season past when I haven't bet them because I couldn't get them at long numbers. This is a year where maybe you can get a slightly longer number, in part because they've looked more flawed. But I think part of that is, they got rid of Wiseman. He was not the only thing, but they've kind of got their rotation in a place where it's a little bit better now. They're not trying to span the two generations. as much. And I think they're looking a little better here. And honestly, the West doesn't have a Bucks or a Celtics. And so I think it is a little more open. So, if you got $1 to put on Cavs Warriors, or if you want to kind of separate it out and maybe look at, I think Cavs are like plus 2,900 for Eastern Conference, or just kind of have them in mind as you're going into the postseason as two teams the market might be a little bit low on right now.
I've already put in a position on the Cavs, who are just 1,100 to win the East. That's about the number that I got it at. I like the Cavs side of this. I've talked about this on a couple pods. I'm going to say it again. For 4 months, I've been like, look, the Warriors, when they're together, their intended starters, Steph, Clay, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney, have the best net rating of those 5 players. Like, people hear net rating and their eyes gloss over. I get it. Those 5 players together beat the opponent by more for whatever section of possessions you want to do, 50, 20, 100. They beat them by more than anybody else. When Draymond, Steph, and Clay all start and finish a series together, they have not lost. The only times that group has lost is 2016 when Draymond missed game 5 of the suspension, and 2019 when Clay got hurt. That's the only 2 times. They are 4-0 in winning the motherfucking title when they have those 3 guys healthy for the duration of the series. Now here's the other side of it. I talked about this with Ken Barkley. Ken's who got me started on this in an episode that we did about a month ago. The Warriors have told us for 5 months, we are not great. We're just not. We can't win on the road. Our defense is mediocre. Our offense is mediocre. We're an average team. That's who we are. We're a 500 team that looks awesome at home and looks like dog shit on the road. And so I have a hard time with all this. There was 2 numbers that really kind of stuck out with me, which is, I looked these up and posted them on Twitter over the weekend. No team since 2000 with a sub 500 road record has won the title. Not a single one. The other one is that if you are not a top 3 seed, there's only like 16 that have won the conference in NBA history. And since 2000, there's only 1. Like, if you're not a top 3 seed, you don't win. That's just like, that's been a thing in the NBA. Now, the answer here is going to be like, aren't the Warriors a great example to be kind of like the outlier? And it's entirely possible. And 100-1 is pretty good. On your Cavs side of this, the reason I bet the Cavs, because it looked like, when I bet the Cavs, it looked like it was going to be Celtics 1, Bucks 2. Okay. I like the Cavs if the Celtics are the 1 seed. That's not necessarily that I think that the Cavs will beat, like, I'm not going to be like, I won't even probably bet the Cavs. I'll probably bet a little bit. I'll probably bet the Cavs a little bit to beat the Celtics, but I'll wait till they go down 0-1. I like that matchup a lot, even though they lost to them last night and the Celtics pulled away from them. I like that matchup a lot. But they got to get Celtics. If it's Bucks 1, Cavs 4, because the Cavs are getting the 4 seed. Like, I feel pretty confident Cavs are going to get 4. If it's Bucks 1, I think that ticket's dead. If the Bucks don't have to play, or if the Cavaliers don't have to play Philly or Milwaukee, then I think that they're live. That's kind of where I come to on the Cavaliers. I like the numbers. I like these that you mentioned, the Nuggets, Bucks. Again, I've got some of that. That's very, very good. I like that one quite a bit. I think another one that's kind of interesting to look at is if we take a look at Milwaukee versus Phoenix. That's also another one that you're going to get a pretty good number on compared to some of these other ones. Bucks Suns is 8-1. One of the things I did last year, just to talk a little bit more about like the process of betting this, is I bet Bucks Warriors at the start of the playoffs. And I waited and I waited and I waited and waited and waited. And then when the Bucks, I think they went up 2-1 on the Celtics. When they went up 2-1 on the Celtics, then I bet Celtics Warriors. and use that as my hedge against the other one. And it was phenomenal. So there's a lot of ways that you can bet these in both before the playoff start and after. Something to really consider. If you want to get really crazy, you can go into the finals exact result, but I would just say to go the other way. And that way you can probably hedge one of the conference finalists in the conference finals. You can just hedge that leg of it. You can wait and be like, okay, if you bet Celtics Suns, like, all right, the Celtics are up 2-1. I'm sitting pretty here. The Suns and Nuggets are tied 1-1 or whatever, and you can find different spots to bet that. So, you have anything else on that? Or are we good to go?
No, I think I agree with you 100%. It is, and to be honest, they're also incredibly fun bets. And like,
yes,
as much as we may want to hand out winners here, it's like a lot of this us do it for fun as well. And it's really, really fun to kind of be keeping an eye on both sides and have that team you can kind of hedge out, and they're very malleable and a fun bet to play with.
All right, it's gonna wrap it up for Buckets for Friday. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back on Monday with a weekend recap episode. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you guys again next time. You can follow Jim Turvey on Twitter at TurveyBets. You can follow me on Twitter at HP Basketball. Our thanks to David Payne, our producer. Make sure to download the Action Network app. We'll see you guys again next time. Until then, let's get buckets.